They have no basis for it.
Called Dr Cam Calder.
Yes. Mr Chairman, thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge Dr David Clark for having a Members' Bill before the House. It's well done. April the 25th. April the 25th, Anzac Day. A day of respect, a day of commemoration, a day of reflection, a day of significance, a unique day which marks the sacrifice of generation after generation. Allow me to paint a picture for you. The place, Pukekura Park, New Plymouth. A young boy, 3 or 4 years old. The first time he'd heard a band with the kettle drums. The first time probably he'd heard a pipe band and felt that curious tingling at the back of the neck that anybody with antecedents from Scotland always feels when they hear the pipes. Long lines of men and some women snaking into the ground. At the back, the school cadets. Before them, shortly after the Korean War, quite a few Korean War veterans. The larger majority were World War II veterans and a smaller number of World War I veterans. But the smallest group, very, very small, probably fewer than a dozen frail older men with their medals clacking, the poppies on their chest, walking at the head of the parade into Pukekura Park in New Plymouth. And among those men was my grandfather, Harold Morley Thompson. These were the men, the last men, the few of the New Zealand mounted riflemen who had gone to South Africa to serve in New Zealand's first overseas campaign. Almost 6,500 New Zealanders served in that campaign. And I guess that was the first time I felt that sense of pride of the fact that my granddad was there, and sitting on his knee, listening to his stories of that campaign, I became aware of what it meant to serve King and, well, at that stage, Queen and country. I remember him being enormously proud. To be part of it, to be there on Anzac Day. And I remember hearing some of the stories. If I can be indulged by the House, I remember him telling a story. Somehow he did that unwritten crime. Well, it's not unwritten, it's quite clearly written down. If you don't have the rifle that you've been issued with. He was a mounted rifleman. No rifle, he had a carbine. Unfortunately, the carbine has a much shorter range than a rifle. And they're engaging the bore at some 500 metres. And his commanding officer heard the crack as Thompson engaged the enemy and recognised that it wasn't a rifle, recognised it was a carbine, and said, "Thompson, 200 metres forward." He survived that unfortunate brush with the extra proximity of the enemy and lived to come back to New Zealand and have a very long and successful life. Some years later, I was leading my own platoon of school cadets in the Anzac Parade in the same place at Pukekura Park, and I venture to suggest that all the students, even though we were all young, 13, 14, 15 and 16, on that parade, were very cognizant of the sacrifices made on their behalf by those who weren't there with them on that Anzac Day parade. A few years later, as a member of OUMC, the Otago University Medical Company, the Blue Berets, I attended many a dawn parade in Dunedin, met the veterans, heard their stories, and was introduced to the notorious dawn parade rum coffee. More recently, Mr Chair, I've been honoured to attend the dawn service at Manurewa Cenotaph, and I see a colleague across the House from me today, and I remember being there a couple of years ago. The colleague I've just mentioned and another colleague from the Labour Party had arrived without a wreath. So in the spirit of the day, I gestured to them to come up, and we laid the wreath as local MPs in the area together. It was a it was an indication of the special, unique nature of the day. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to leave you with this thought. Anzac Day.
Ian Lees, Galloway.
Very much, Mr. Chair. Look.